The silent engineer Marcus Quinn had always been the quiet one aboard the research vessel Endurance. While other crew members filled the corridors with laughter and stories, he spoke in whispers and worked in shadows. The massive ship hummed through the void, carrying humanity's first diplomatic mission to the Zentari homeworld. But Marcus found more comfort in the engine room than the grand assembly halls. The Zentari were an ancient race, their civilization spanning millennia, while humans had barely learned to walk upright. They had agreed to meet with Earth's representatives, though their reasons remained mysterious. Most humans aboard felt intimidated by their host's advanced technology and telepathic abilities. Marcus simply focused on keeping the ship's systems running perfectly. Vexa Northol, the Zentari liaison, often passed through the engineering sections during her daily observations. She moved with the fluid grace of her people, her crystalline skin catching the light like living diamonds. Her large, multifaceted eyes seemed to see everything, yet she never spoke to the human crew members directly. The diplomatic team had warned everyone that the Zentari considered most human thoughts too chaotic and primitive to acknowledge. Marcus had noticed her watching him work. Unlike the others who tried to impress her with grand gestures and elaborate speeches, he simply continued his tasks. When the primary coolant system developed a leak, he worked for 18 hours straight to prevent a catastrophic failure. When the navigation array began producing interference, he traced the problem through thousands of circuits until he found a single faulty component smaller than a grain of sand. During one particularly difficult repair, Marcus found himself alone in the engine room at 0300 hours. The ship's artificial gravity had been fluctuating, making delicate work nearly impossible. He muttered to himself as he often did, talking through the problem to stay focused. "Nobody listens anyway," he whispered while recalibrating the gravity. "Generators. They all think I'm just another mechanic. But these systems, they're beautiful. Every component has a purpose. Every connection matters. Just like people, I guess. Everyone has something important to contribute, even if nobody notices." He paused, looking up at the massive gravity core that kept everyone safely anchored to the deck. "I may not be brave like Captain Morrison or brilliant like Dr. Hendricks, but I can make sure everyone gets home safely. That has to count for something." Behind him, unheard and unseen, Vexa Northol stood in the doorway. Her telepathic abilities had been drawn by something unusual, a human mind that didn't broadcast chaos and noise like the others. Instead, she had discovered thoughts of duty, dedication, and quiet strength. For the first time since joining this mission, she had found a human worth understanding. Marcus finished his work and gathered his tools, never knowing that his whispered words had been heard by someone who would soon change everything. The unexpected response the next morning brought crisis to the Endurance. Captain Morrison's face was grim as he addressed the senior staff in the main briefing room. The Zentari homeworld lay just 2 days ahead, but their hosts had sent a troubling message. They were reconsidering the entire diplomatic mission. "They claim our mental transmissions are too disruptive," Captain Morrison explained to the assembled officers. "Apparently, our thoughts create what they call cognitive pollution that makes meaningful communication impossible." Dr. Hendricks, the mission's chief scientist, shifted nervously in his seat. "Sir, we've tried meditation techniques, neural dampeners, even complete silence protocols. Nothing seems to reduce our mental footprint enough to satisfy them. They're giving us one final chance," the captain continued. "If we can't prove that humanity is capable of what they call thoughtful existence, they'll terminate all contact and declare our species unfit for galactic civilization." The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. This wasn't just about trade agreements or scientific exchange. This was humanity's chance to join a community of advanced civilizations. Failure meant isolation among the stars, forever. marked as too primitive for peaceful contact. Marcus sat quietly in the back corner, having been called to the meeting only because the captain wanted all department heads present. He watched the panic spread across faces, listened to desperate suggestions and increasingly frantic plans. Nobody seemed to notice when he slipped out of the room. He returned to engineering, his sanctuary among the humming machines and flowing energy conduits. The gravity generators were running smoothly now, their rhythmic pulse like a heartbeat keeping the ship alive. He began his routine maintenance checks, finding peace in the familiar tasks. Problems with the diplomatic mission? A soft voice asked behind him. Marcus turned to find Vexa Northul standing in the doorway. Her presence was striking, yet somehow calming. Unlike other Xanthari he had observed, she didn't radiate the cold superiority that made most humans uncomfortable. "Just keeping the ship running," Marcus replied quietly. "Though I suppose it won't matter much if your people decide we're not worth talking to." Vexa stepped closer, her crystalline features reflecting the engine room's gentle lighting. "You speak differently than the others. Your thoughts, they have structure, purpose." Marcus blinked in surprise. The Xanthari liaison was actually speaking to him, not at him or around him like she did with the diplomatic team. "I'm not sure what you mean. Last night, I heard you speaking to your machines. You showed respect for their function, understanding of their importance. You demonstrated what my people call thoughtful existence." "I was just talking to myself," Marcus said, confused. "It helps me focus." Vexa's expression softened in a way that seemed almost human. "Among my people, we believe that how one treats the small things reveals the truth of their character. Your colleagues speak of grand alliances and cosmic significance, but their thoughts are filled with ambition and fear. You spoke of duty and service, of ensuring others' safety above your own recognition." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "You heard all that?" "I hear all human thoughts aboard this vessel," Vexa admitted. "It is both a gift and a burden of my kind, but yours are different. They whisper instead of shout. They build instead of demand." The implication slowly dawned on Marcus. "You mean the mission might succeed because of how I think?" Vexa nodded slowly. "I believe your species deserves a chance, Marcus Quinn, but not because of your diplomats or scientists. Because of engineers who work in darkness so others can walk in light." The hidden strength word spread quickly through the endurance that Marcus Quinn had somehow caught the attention of their Xanthari liaison. Captain Morrison immediately called him to the bridge, where the senior staff waited with a mixture of curiosity and desperate hope. "Engineer Quinn," the captain began formally, "it appears you've made quite an impression on our guest. She's requested to speak with you privately about the mission parameters." Dr. Hendricks frowned, clearly annoyed that a maintenance engineer had succeeded where his carefully planned scientific presentations had failed. "Sir, with respect, perhaps someone with more diplomatic experience should handle such a crucial conversation." "The Xanthari specifically asked for Marcus," Captain Morrison replied firmly. "At this point, we can't afford to ignore any opportunity." Marcus felt the weight of everyone's expectations settling on his shoulders. The success or failure of humanity's first contact with a galactic civilization might depend on a conversation he never asked for. He nodded reluctantly and followed Vexa to a quiet observation lounge overlooking the star field. "You seem uncomfortable." With the attention Vexa observed as they settled into chairs facing the vast window. "I'm not used to being important," Marcus admitted. "I fix things that break. I solve problems that nobody else notices until they become critical. I don't negotiate the future of entire species." Vexa's laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Perhaps that is exactly why you should. Tell me, Marcus Quinn, what do you see when you look at the stars?" Marcus gazed out at the infinite carpet of lights stretching before them. I see systems, he said quietly. Energy flowing from core to surface, planets orbiting in perfect mathematical harmony, gravity wells that connect everything in an invisible web. Each star is like a component in a circuit bigger than we can comprehend. And humanity's place in this circuit? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering. We're new, untested, like a component that just got installed, and everyone's waiting to see if we'll cause a system failure or help everything run better. Vexa leaned forward, her multifaceted eyes reflecting starlight. My people have observed many species reaching this moment. Most approach us with demands or pleas, speaking of what they deserve or what they need. They think in terms of dominance or submission, of proving their worth through strength or cleverness. But that's not what you're looking for, Marcus said, understanding beginning to dawn. We seek species capable of thoughtful existence, Vexa confirmed. Beings who understand that true civilization isn't about individual achievement or even species-wide accomplishment. It's about recognizing your place in something larger and choosing to fulfill that role with wisdom and humility. Marcus turned from the window to meet her gaze. Like maintenance work on a galactic scale. Exactly. Vex's expression grew serious. My people have reached a crucial decision point regarding humanity. Some believe your species is too chaotic, too driven by individual desires to ever achieve stable civilization. Others argue that chaos can lead to innovation and growth that more structured species cannot achieve. And what do you believe? I believe I have found evidence that humanity possesses something my people had not previously observed in you. The capacity for quiet wisdom. The ability to see beyond personal ambition to universal purpose. Marcus felt a chill of responsibility. You mean me. Just me. You represent a possibility, Vexa corrected gently. If one human can demonstrate thoughtful existence, perhaps others can learn it. Perhaps your species deserves the chance to grow into galactic citizenship, rather than being dismissed before you truly begin. Through the observation lounge's speakers, the ship's intercom crackled to life. Captain Morrison's voice filled the room. All hands prepare for final approach to the Xanthari homeworld. Estimated arrival in 36 hours. Marcus looked back at the stars, feeling the weight of an entire species' future resting on his shoulders. What happens next? Next, Vexa said softly, you show my people that human whispers can be more powerful than human shouts. The moment of truth, the Xanthari homeworld appeared before them like a jewel carved from living light. Crystal spires stretched impossibly high, connected by bridges that seemed to be made of solidified aurora. The Endurance received docking coordinates and settled into a berth within a space station that dwarfed anything humanity had ever constructed. Marcus stood in the shuttle bay, wearing his best uniform, but feeling completely out of place among the diplomatic team. Captain Morrison had decided that he should accompany the first contact delegation, despite protests from Dr. Hendricks and other senior officers. Remember, the captain said quietly, as they prepared to board the transport to the planet's surface. You've already made a connection with their representative. Just be yourself. The delegation consisted of 12 humans, including Marcus, who would meet with the Xanthari High Council. As they descended through the planet's atmosphere, Marcus marveled at cities that looked like living organisms, their architecture flowing and organic, yet clearly engineered to mathematical perfection. Council chamber was a vast crystalline dome where light refracted through walls to create a symphony of colors. 12 Xanthari counselors sat in a perfect circle, their forms tall and elegant, their minds clearly unified in purpose. At the center of the circle stood a single chair, obviously meant for the human representative. Captain Morrison stepped forward, but Vexa Northol raised her hand gently. The council wishes to hear from Marcus Quinn, she announced, the human who thinks in whispers rather than shouts. Dr. Hendricks started to object, but Marcus found himself walking forward before anyone could stop him. The chair at the center of the circle felt like it was made for someone much more important than a maintenance engineer, but he sat down anyway. The eldest counselor, her crystalline skin bearing the deep blue of ancient wisdom, spoke first. Marcus Quinn of Earth, you have been selected to represent your species in this moment of judgment. Are you prepared to answer for all humanity? Marcus felt his throat go dry. I'm not sure anyone can answer for an entire species, Your Excellence. I can only speak from my own experience. A murmur of surprise rippled through the assembled Zenthari. Apparently, claiming to represent all humanity was the expected response. Tell us, another counselor said, why should we risk contamination of galactic civilization by allowing humanity to join our community? Marcus looked around the circle of ancient, powerful beings and felt smaller than he ever had in his life. Then he thought of the Endurance floating in space above them and the 1,000 souls aboard who depended on systems he maintained every day. Because we fix things, he said quietly. I know that sounds simple, but hear me out. Every species you've encountered has probably emphasized their achievements, their power, their unique contributions. We can't do that. We're new, we're small, and we make mistakes constantly. The counselors exchanged glances, clearly not hearing. What they expected. Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength. But we also never stop trying to make things better. When something breaks, we don't abandon it or replace it or declare it worthless. We figure out what went wrong and we fix it. We take broken things and make them work again, often better than they worked before. You speak of mechanical repairs, the eldest counselor observed. How does this relate to galactic civilization? Because civilizations break too, Marcus replied. Systems fail, relationships deteriorate, conflicts arise. When that happens, you need people who know how to diagnose problems, trace them to their source, and repair the damage. You need people who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty, working on the unglamorous problems that keep everything else functioning. He stood up slowly, meeting the gaze of each counselor in turn. We may not be the wisest or the most advanced species you'll ever encounter, but we're the ones who will stay up all night, fixing the life support systems so everyone else can sleep safely. We're the ones who will crawl through the maintenance tunnels of galactic civilization, making sure everything keeps running smoothly. The chamber fell silent. Marcus realized he had just made the most important speech of his life, and possibly in human history, and he had no idea if it had been enough. Then Vexa Northul stepped forward and spoke words that would echo through history. The Council recognizes humanity as caretakers of the galaxy. Welcome to the community of worlds. The whispered legacy? 3 months after first contact, the Endurance had become something unprecedented. The first joint human Zenthari research vessel. Marcus found himself in the strange position of being both chief engineer and informal human. Ambassador, a role he never wanted, but somehow couldn't escape. The ship now carried a mixed crew of 50 humans and 20 Zenthari, working together to explore uncharted regions of the galaxy. The integration hadn't been easy, but Marcus had discovered that his approach to maintenance work translated surprisingly well to species relations. When tensions arose, he listened quietly, identified the source of the problem, and worked patiently. To repair the damage, Vexa had been assigned as the Zenthari cultural liaison, a position that kept her working closely with Marcus on daily operational issues. Their friendship had deepened into something neither species had previously experienced, a bond that transcended telepathic abilities or cultural differences. The latest reports from Earth are encouraging, Vexa said as they stood in the observation lounge where they had first truly talked. 17 more worlds have agreed to meet with human delegations. They specifically requested quiet humans like you. Marcus smiled wryly. I'm not sure there are many others like me. most humans prefer to be noticed. Then perhaps it is time to teach them the power of whispers, Vexa suggested. The Galactic Council has approved funding for a new academy. A place where humans can learn what you already understand naturally. What's that? That the universe doesn't need more voices shouting for attention. It needs more minds willing to listen, to understand, to quietly solve the problems that everyone else overlooks. Through the lounge windows, they could see their destination approaching, a previously unknown star system where long-range sensors had detected artificial structures. It would be humanity's first official discovery as members of galactic civilization. Are you nervous? Marcus asked as they prepared for what might be another first contact situation. I have learned something from humans, Vexa replied with what Marcus had learned to recognize as her equivalent of a smile. Sometimes the most important discoveries come not from searching for them, but from simply doing your job with care and attention. As if summoned by their conversation, Captain Morrison's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. All hands, prepare for arrival at coordinates designated Discovery 1. Engineering teams to stations. This is what we came out here to find, people. Let's make humanity proud. Marcus gathered his tools and headed for the engine room, but Vexa caught his arm gently. Marcus, she said quietly, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had spoken louder that night? If you had tried to impress me with grand words and bold claims? Marcus considered the question seriously. I suppose you would have dismissed me like all the others. We might never have become allies. My people have a saying, Vexa told him. The wind that whispers shapes mountains over time, while the storm that roars destroys itself in moments. Your whisper has shaped the entire galaxy's future. As Marcus headed to his duties, ensuring that all systems were ready for whatever they might encounter, he reflected on how strange his life had become. He was still the quiet engineer who preferred machines to crowds, but somehow that had made him the bridge between two civilizations. Behind him, Vexa Northul watched through the observation window as they approached the unknown structures. In her telepathic perception, she could hear the gentle hum of Marcus's thoughts as he worked, the same quiet dedication that had first caught her attention. It was a sound that had become the foundation of a new age of galactic cooperation. The whisper that changed everything continued to echo across the stars, growing stronger not through volume, but through the simple truth that sometimes the most powerful words are the ones spoken only to oneself in the darkness, while ensuring that others can walk safely in the light. The Endurance flew onward into the unknown, carrying with it the proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their ability to conquer or compete, but in their willingness to fix what was broken and tend to what was overlooked, one quiet word at a time.